Welcome in to this episode of Pod Slamma Jamma, live and local on this Thursday evening, June 20th, 2024. And we are coming off some breaking news, to be honest. Some news that came out of left field, came out of nowhere, whatever analogy you want to use, but the Houston Cougars are in search for a new athletics director after news broke literally. It was right around 4 p.m. today, Houston time, that the university announced that Chris Pezman would no longer serve as the athletics director for the university, and they were beginning a search for a new director. We're going to get all into it, the surprise, the shock of it all. But joining me here on this episode of Pod Slamma Jamma, Kris Gardner of the Houston Roundball Review, Dayon Dunlap. How are y'all doing?
Fantastic. How y'all doing?
Oh man, I'm doing well. I'm doing well.
So let's get into it. And you know what? Let's just start with our reaction because speaking for me personally, I was shocked when that tweet little notification. I saw Joseph Duarte's first, like I said, around 4 p.m. And when I read Joseph's tweet, I was like, wow, that's interesting. And then I was like, I wonder if it was just that Pezman decided he wanted to move on, and then literally not even 2 minutes later, the University of Houston. This was the University of Houston, not the athletics department. It came from the main University of Houston's communications department. Set out the news release with a quote from Renew Couture that they had moved on from Chris Pezman. And Chris, if you want to go ahead and put the official news release on the screen. This is what it read. Again, it's the University of Houston begins national search for new athletics director. The University of Houston is embarking on a new chapter in the leadership of its athletics program. Chris Pezman will no longer serve as athletic director. The university is initiating a national search for a new vice president for intercollegiate athletics. And this was the quote that was included from UH President Renew Couture. She was quoted as saying, Chris Pezman has ushered our athletics program through a period of incredible transformation.
Okay.
Hey,
I
try
might
again.
cut off there.
There you go.
Yeah, we are grateful for his leadership over the past 6 years. He has been pivotal. He's been a pivotal part of our entry into the Big 12 Conference and has championed the success of student athletes on the field and in the classroom. This was a difficult but necessary decision as we navigate a paradigm shift in collegiate athletics. I want to thank Chris for his dedication to UH and to our student athletes on behalf of the university. I wish Chris and his family the very best. And quote, and in that release, it said the search for the new athletics director will begin immediately and will take utmost priority. And during the transition, Raymond S. Bartlett, who is currently the senior vice president for the administration and finance, so a little bit of a money background, will serve as the interim director for athletics in the meantime until they find that new athletics director. Chris, Dayon, what are your thoughts? What were your reactions when you first heard the news? And anything else you think about this move that suddenly came out of nowhere?
Slightly different than you two. I got it. I didn't see Joseph's tweet. I got it from a text from a colleague of ours. And then I went to Twitter and saw JD's tweet. But I had heard probably within the last few weeks that Pez was on thin ice. The ice was cracking under his feet. Fundraising was an issue. I was told that donors had lost faith in him, lost confidence in him, being able to lead UH athletics forward in this new age of NIL, and all of those things that come with it. Fundraising, the coaching hires, that was, other issues. So I was surprised by the timing of it, as in today, but I was not surprised that he is out as AD.
I'm glad you said it that way, because I was like Andy. I was surprised, but like you just said, I wasn't surprised in the move, just surprised in the timing of it. The timing of it is what surprised me, not so much other news that UH was moving on from Pez. And other than that, I'm pretty much I'm excited. I think it was a good move in my opinion. I think now I wouldn't know. I have a question though, because previously in our group chat, we was just kind of talking about how SMU, how much money they raised. Do you think that potentially has some influence over the impact of Chris Pezman?
I mean, I think so. It all ties together with fundraising. I think one of the comments from Big Jack, Coach Sampson, I'm curious to get Joseph's thoughts on this when he joins us momentarily. But SMU announced they raised $159 million toward their move to the ACC. And of course, 100 million of that happened in 7 days. Okay, so that's 7 days. I would love for UH alums to be able to pull that together in a month, not 7 days, but a month or whatever. But I think that's possible. But fundraising, in a nutshell, is the biggest factor. But yes, I do think Coach Sampson, his comments, challenging marketing, butts in the seats, thing outside the box, all those comments were very, to me, telling. I don't know if that was the final nail in the coffin, but like I said, I was told in the last 4 or 5 weeks that Pez was on thin ice.
Real quickly, let's go through some of milestones, some markers of Chris Pezman's tenure. Obviously, he joined the University of Houston in that role in 2017. And current via the Houston Chronicle, Chris Pezman still had 2 years left on his deal. He was scheduled to run through 2026, making roughly around, according to the Chronicle, $625,000 in 2024, up to $650,000 in 2025, and $675,000 through 2026. Obviously, there were multiple of moves that maybe not necessarily the most popular, but there were good moves and well through the mix. Now, Chris Pezman, when it came to coaching hires, didn't necessarily hire a lot of coaches. I think the big one that you can attribute to him as that badge of honor, obviously, when Fritz came just a couple of months ago, but before then was David Rare with the volleyball program, who came and joined Houston in 2019. But when you think about other moves or lack thereof, when it came to the baseball program with Todd Whitting, who had just signed a new 3-year deal before the beginning of this season, obviously, Ron Huey and what's going on with the women's basketball program just a couple of weeks ago with the Scott and Holman guys that were talking about the allegations or the turmoil that was with the softball program. And obviously, of course, everything that happened just the last year when it came to Dana Holgerson and how that ended up turning out for Houston. He had a very eventful time, but let's get into it by bringing the first person that reported Chris Pezman was not going to be returning as the athletics director at the University of Houston. But before then, we'd like to thank each and every single one of you guys for joining us on this Thursday evening. Obviously, everyone is trying to get more information about the decision to move on from Chris Pezman. But I'd like to remind everybody, this is Pod Slam and Jamma, sponsored by Star Pizza. Thank you to Mike and Jennifer Pittman for being a sponsor on this show last minute as we put it together. Star Pizza, with 3 locations throughout the Houston area, is your go-to stop for some delicious pizza. And now their famous lunch pizza buffet is available for on Tuesday and Friday. They added an additional day. Once again, their famous lunch pizza buffet is now on Tuesday and Friday. So be sure to stop by any of the 3 locations for some delicious Star Pizza. Without further ado, let's bring in Joseph Duarte of the Houston Chronicle, who we like to thank him for taking the time out of his busy day, and joining us on this episode of Pod Slam and Jam.
Well,
Joseph,
I appreciate
how are you, sir?
Appreciate you guys having me on. I think I'm in Dayon's living room because I watch the show once in a while, and I think I put his background. So I'm borrowing the crib for a few minutes here.
That's the first thing I thought about. Yeah, me too.
You guys are the original OG media on NIL deal, so I need to get in on that action. And I've had Star Pizza, it's some good pizza. So I'm glad Mike and the gang over there have been able to help y'all out.
So what are your thoughts, JD? When did you first hear rumblings of this?
let me take you through. Last night we were at an event. They had the Cougar Summer Tour in Webster, and if you saw Chris Pezman there, and you saw him shaking hands, working the room, the energy, the talking about the future, this guy had no idea that this was coming this soon. And then you fast forward about 15 hours, and he's supposed to have an end of the year review meeting with Renew Couture, and it turned into the, we're parting ways, we're going to make a change. And I'm told they completely blindsided him. But to answer your question, Chris, there had been rumblings. I hadn't heard any type of concrete date. We all knew he had about 2 years left on his deal. I didn't think it'd be this soon. I thought maybe a year out is typically when you see schools maybe decide, hey, we've got this last year here. Let's go ahead and make a change and do it then. So this was a little bit surprising. You don't also see a lot of moves like this made at the start of a summer.
Yes.
Because of how, that just the logistics of going on a search and who's available. So, yeah, to answer your question, there have been some rumblings, but I hadn't heard anything concrete like some other people had about, maybe something a little bit more imminent. We sat down in Arizona at the Big 12 meetings in early May, and he was pretty upfront about the challenges that this program was going through. Money was the big issue, and, you've documented it. We've talked about it for years about where they stand and how it's going to take a while. But that was his big concern. But I never got to feel like this was a guy who knew that he was maybe on those last, few weeks, last few months of having the job. So, this was a bit of a surprise when I got the phone call that this was going down, mid-afternoon or so.
Where does UH go from here? Do you have a list already of possible candidates and placements?
That was asked of me. And, at this point, it's not like football coaches where you kind of know who those hot up-and-coming coordinators are if you're going that route, or if there's a sitting head coach. ADs are a little bit tricky in terms of, who's out there. And I'll say that this job is a lot different than it was a few years ago. You've got the Big 12 that, that not only works for head coaches, but it also works when you're trying to get a top administrator. So, the name that obviously gets thrown out a lot is Jeremiah Dickey. He's got some history with the school. He was Mac Rhodes' number 2 guy when Mac was here. He's been at Boise State for several years and has done a great job at Boise State. Now, at the same time, I asked people today, maybe does U of H take the Big 12's approach when they went with Brett Yormark and get an outside-the-box kind of hire? Do you go with somebody who maybe you don't have as much of an athletic background and you go for more of a finance guy, a money guy? Because the way this thing is changing with NIL and then the revenue share that's coming up, it's a lot to take in. And that's why, at the end of the day, does this fall on Chris Pezman? He's the head of the athletic department, but this is going to be a challenging job for anyone that comes in because, Chris, you've said this many times on this podcast that this school has traditionally not done a good job of luring in new money, the fundraising. They seem to have the same small group of people that they go to. And just last night I was talking to a few people there. I was like, hey, are you guys donors? And they're like, no, we're not really, or we're on a smaller scale. Houston needs to kind of target those type of people and build up that list, because right now it doesn't matter if it's you, Andy, Dayon, or myself taking over that job, or somebody who's an actual AD. It's going to be a tough climb until you get some of that money that's coming in with the Big 12 full share in 2 years.
Joseph, do you put this comment up from H-Town Big Dobbs? Do you, and I guess everybody, do you believe Pez's position should be broken up into 2 positions, one to handle marketing and sponsorship and the other to focus on athletics?
I think you should just give the job to Kelvin Sampson. I think that's what you should. The way he's talked, think about it. A week ago, we had him on, and I just asked, hey, what were the takeaways from the first year in the Big 12? And Kelvin went into a really deep answer on marketing and the money, and if you don't get on this wagon now, you're going to get left behind. I joke, but I've seen guys like Mac Brown be considered for an AD job. What Houston doesn't want. Texas went with Perrin a few years ago, and he didn't really have an athletic background, and that didn't turn out real well. And I think Steve Patterson, you could say the same thing. And obviously that's a huge difference in terms of money and everything that's coming in for these 2 schools. But, I I don't think you break it up. I think you need to you get the right guy in place. Then you sort of surround yourself. I like the number 2 guy that they have right now. I think Garrett Classy was a good pickup from Nebraska. He's only been here a short time, so you really haven't been able to see what he's done. You know, they got Alvin Franklin in place. I think that he's a guy, once there's some direction and they figure out in their all hands meeting of how they're going to look for revenue. And think about it. There's the sponsorship opportunities coming up on the jerseys, on the field. There's all limitless opportunities to get money. So I think you stick with one person, but you do need, like Kelvin said, you need the marketing aspect of it to step it up. You know, I see a lot of schools that are always saying, hey, you know, we're this far away on season ticket sales or that. Houston has not been real transparent with that stuff. They announced the Rise campaign and they said the goal. I don't even know where they're at on the goal right now.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, they haven't updated in forever.
They have not updated that. And if you want to generate interest, if you want me to pull out my checkbook and write you a check, I need to see progress. I need to see something tangible that says I'm not just throwing my money away. You have a plan. And I'm not sure if in the end here they've had a plan. And I think that's going to be the biggest challenge of the next person who comes in. And I do think it's a one-person job, but I think he's going to have the lieutenants lined up behind him, and they can make this work. They just need direction. And I think that was lost here in the last few years.
This is a great point, guys. Get your thoughts on this. One of my buddies who's an alum, he echoes this. I'm shocked we don't have more company sponsorships. We are a big oil energy city. H-Town has a lot of money, a lot of companies. Where's the connection and synergy between those companies and UH?
Well, you know, Chris, the difference in, say, what Houston can do in terms of that versus Waco or Lubbock, you know, you are a major city. Yes, you have those opportunities, but you're also competing with the other major professional sports in town. And you see that those companies line up to sponsor the Astros. You see those on the wall. You see it at Toyota Center. You see it at the Texans. And I don't know if that's a product of Houston not having reached out and presented, hey, this is why we need you. This is why we think it'll work. Or maybe not until they got into the Big 12 have people said, hey, what's the return? Is it worth us getting involved if we're not going to get much return if they're in the American Athletic? So I think the Big 12 should open those doors. I think you're right. And that whoever asked that question, they need to explore that. I don't think there's one stone that should go unturned if you're at the University of Houston. Look under it. You may find a nickel here, but that's a nickel you didn't have. You know, then you find $1 and then and it all adds up. And I have not seen that, because every time I get into a conversation with a reader or somebody at a game, they bring up the same company. We talk about sponsorships. Oh, it's going to be Landry's. It's going to be Gallery Furniture. You're telling me in 4 million people, those are the only companies you can think of in this town that you can affiliate with Houston? That shows me that somebody has a lack of creativity and going outside the box and finding those people, because you're tapped out where you are right now and you got to find more revenue somewhere else.
And I think that sums up really what Coach Sampson said last Thursday. It's really past time, beyond time, for Houston to think outside the box and not leave any stone unturned.
Why do you think basketball is going to Vegas to play that NIL? They've got to get money somewhere to compete. They've got to keep the Terrence Arsenaults and the JoJo Tugglers and those guys, J1 and LJ, from leaving. And by getting that extra $1 million, and if you win it, you get another 2, I believe. That sets you up. Hell, they've got somebody donating a 65 Mustang. That's a good step in the right direction.
Right.
I can see Andy and you guys chilling down Washington Avenue with the top down on that thing. I mean, that's something that generates interest. Yes. Those are the fun things that people will give money to that we haven't seen, that they're starting to do it. So I give them kudos for that. But there needs to be more of that stuff and that outside the box thinking, because you got to, you know, like the tour we went on with the suites and that party pavilion. Those are steps in the right direction. It's just been a long time coming, and they're way behind when it comes to money.
Joseph, have you heard a timetable for an official announcement of the new AD?
You know, I haven't, Chris. These things, we saw how the Willie stuff went down. I mean, these things can take off. I don't think they're going in blind. I think they have a list that they're going to work off of. And, I wouldn't be surprised if maybe right after the 4th of July holiday, maybe that time span, maybe before Media Day in Vegas, we have a hire. But no, I have not been given an exact timetable. I will bring up one thing, and I think you mentioned, or somebody brought it up, the intern that they named. I thought that was very interesting that they went outside the athletic department and Renee Couture assigned somebody from her inner circle on the other side of campus, because that tells me, one, he's got a finance and money background, so he covers that. But I think this is a message that she's sending, that there's a short leash right now, and she wants to keep the athletic department very close in terms of how things are going to operate. And I don't think this is for the long term, but I think it's just a message that, hey, I'm going to be more hands-on than many people think she already is. So that appointment right there to me was real interesting. And, we'll have to see what happens. Probably not going to be a lot of action for that person. And, we're talking the end of the year with stuff, but I thought that was a huge takeaway from today and how they made the announcement.
Andy, Dion, you got any questions for JD?
No, Joseph went right into it. I was going to ask him about the interim athletic director, and I think in particular, Joseph, to add on to your point, how that individual comes from that finance background. I think that's a key point, just in terms of what you mentioned, was ultimately the deciding factor to move on from Chris Pezman, where when it comes to that revenue aspect, he just wasn't cutting it under Pezman.
I don't know the pecking order of those around her in terms of like the lieutenants and all the other vice presidents stuff. But I mean, she could have gone probably in a different set of ways, and maybe this just worked out best. I mean, it's a short-term fix. This person, unless they choose that they're going to stay in-house, which I can't see that happening. This is a very short-term fix. So, that was one thing. But I mean, clearly this is an athletic department. I'm not going to say you need to bring in somebody that just goes over the books and you have to find ways. I mean, does that mean, they're not going to cut sports. They're not going to just start slashing positions and stuff and do all that stuff. Do they have a money problem? Yeah. Does it need to be addressed? Absolutely, especially with the things that are on the horizon. But I just think that there's eventually going to need to be some type of, go each line by line, each sport, and sort of take a wholesale inventory of the athletic department to see where they can make the most gains and make the most progress and the quickest progress.
I got a question. How much influence do maybe coaches like Sampson would have on I don't want to say a move like this, but in regards to having strategies or being able to give advice on, like he mentioned recently, about marketing plans and different things maybe that he wasn't hearing, but he always talks about being proactive and looking forward and looking to other things. Influence like him may have on not being stagnant and realizing what's coming in the NIL and the different ways to market and reach this new generation to be able to keep Houston at a high level to really be a powerhouse.
I guarantee you Kelvin Sampson is going to be a part of this in some capacity. He may not go to the in-person meetings, but he will have some input. I think Willie Fritz will be a guy that they look at. And I think and you see that happen with the football hires. I mean, you see other coaches, that get involved and they weigh in because, one, they may know the person. They may have been in the conference that the person was in, may have had some type of direct affiliation with them. So I think you're absolutely right that you need to lean on people like that, because Kelvin Sampson has been around some pretty good ADs, one in particular at Oklahoma, Joe Castiglione, that he talks really high of. So I think there's something to learn by including these coaches, and who knows, I remember a few years ago, Zach Selman, who's at Mississippi State. He was a guy that some here at the University of Houston thought would be a really good fit for the job. And, obviously he took Mississippi State's job, but that just shows you that if you have these coaches that have some type of expertise and knowledge, you might as well lean on them, because you don't want to miss out and maybe hire the wrong person. Because we see the state of a lot of athletic programs right now across the country. You see what's going on at Arizona. You've seen some of the problems that have gone on at either USC and UCLA and Northwestern. So you gotta really hit this one out of the park. And I think Houston will go down the list. And I think Tillman and Renew have an idea. It's just a matter of who they're going to be able to lure to Cullen Boulevard.
And Connor Diaz is correct in that Zach and Kellen are best friends.
Absolutely, yes.
And Zach was the name I heard this afternoon. Right? Yeah, I thought he's coming here. Oh, let me toss this out. And I know, JD, you probably short on time.
I'm good, guys.
All three of y'all, do y'all believe that the next hire will come from a Power 4 program? I'd be kind of surprised.
If it's not Jeremiah Dickey, I think it will come from a Power 5. I think there's only probably a few that they'll look at Power 5, and he makes sense just because of the ties there. I'm not sure if he's a top of the, if he's the favorite right now in the club. I don't think it's there yet. I think he has interest, but I would think if you're Houston, you got to go for somebody at a Power 5. And is that a sitting AD or is that a deputy? That's where you run into, how do you address that? But I mean, there are people that will want to come and live in Houston now that it's in the Big 12.
Yeah, I think I pretty much would echo the same thing that JD said. I think it's best, and you should look from a Power 5, because particularly as someone who's being able to see what a Power 5 not only is where it's going, they understand what it takes to succeed. I think someone having to see and being an experience, whatever position that they have have that experience and knowledge to be able to see how where it is, understand it, and have a vision and a plan for different marketing strategies, because Houston is a big city. I mean, like you said, just 3 sponsors where you mentioned, when people think about it, that's way more than that. I think Houston in a lot of different ways are comfortable with just kind of being stagnant in many different areas. Status quo. And I think in the potential that they have to really reach that next level, they got to hit it out the park with this AD, and they really have to kind of think out of the box in regards to what Houston would normally do and how they would normally operate.
Yeah, I agree 100%, especially considering Pezman, the UH background that he had, alumni moving on from him. It's going to have to be someone from a Power 5 to really sell on the alumni. And if it's not from a Power 5, then it has to be someone, in my opinion, that's completely outside the box, maybe from another industry. But if it's from an athletic background, I agree with both of you. It has to be from Power 5.
Chris, a key thing I think for those who are listening, that to know about whoever takes this job, they're coming into a situation where, we talk about the money and the budget and where it's at, but facility wise, they're in a really good position. They've got some things that they need to do, maybe baseball, some softball stuff, the track, but major infrastructure, TDECU, the football ops, Guy-B, Fertitta, that's all set. And then you look at the contracts. I don't have every head coach, but of the major ones, Willie's signed through 2028, Kelvin's through 2027, Todd Whitting's through 2026, Ron Huey's got 1 season left. Softball coach is expiring in July, so that will be at the top of the order. They just hired a tennis coach, and then the volleyball coach who's done a great job, David Rare. He's got about, I believe, 4 more years left. So from that standpoint, there isn't a lot that needs to change, but it certainly puts on notice those underperforming sports that, hey, if someone comes in, this may be it for you, and you need to turn it around now, because that's typically what happens when a new AD comes in. They want to put their stamp on things, and since the 2 major revenue sports are sealed, that's where the changes are likely to come.
Andy, do you want to bring in our other guest to fill up the screen?
Yeah, we're about to have a loaded screen, but before I bring in Ryan, who has an intro that I have to read from, I want to ask this question to you, Joseph, that was asked by Jeb on YouTube, he said, were the I guess just the outcomes with softball, baseball, and women's basketball, and quite frankly, how they've underperformed the last few seasons. Did that play any part in the decision to move on from Chris Pezman?
I mean, I don't see how it couldn't. It's part of. All of us have jobs where we have bosses that maybe at the end of the year you sit in there and they tell you what you did good, what you maybe need to improve on, and I think those are the ones that fall under that category of need improvement. And I think when it comes to some of the Olympic sports and some of the non, the big three, so to speak, I think there's been some neglect. You look at what Carl Lewis and Leroy and Will Blackburn have done with track. Maybe they're the exception. David Rare is the exception with volleyball, but some of the other sports have really fallen through the cracks. And I think that becomes part of your evaluation at the end of the year that, hey, what's going on with this? We want a competitively well-rounded athletic program, and that's not competitively well-rounded when you have these struggling programs. And then on top of that, when you give extensions that add money, I think us four are the only ones who haven't got paid in the last few years, got the extra deals. But, in all seriousness, I think that all, you just throw it in a bowl and it just shows some, if you're going to highlight the misses, those are the misses that were part of Chris Pezman's tenure.
Joseph Duarte, let's take a quick break. I have to plug Star Pizza, and we'll bring in Ryan. But thank each and every single person that has taken the time out of their Thursday evening to join us on any of our platforms, whether it be on x.com at the Pod Slam Jamma X account, on YouTube, on the Pod Slam Jamma YouTube channel, on the Houston Round Ball Review YouTube channel, or if you're checking us out the next day on our audio-only platforms. This episode of Pod Slam Jamma is sponsored by Star Pizza. With 3 locations throughout the Houston area, Star Pizza is your go-to stop for a delicious pizza. And now their famous lunch pizza buffet has expanded. They are now available on both Tuesday and Friday if you want their famous lunch pizza buffet. Once again, it's now Tuesdays and Fridays at any one of their 3 locations. Once again, that's Star Pizza, a sponsor of today's episode of Pod Slam Jamma. And without further ado, I'd like to bring in our final guest of today's episode of Pod Slam Jamma. And see, Chris, Deon, Joseph, I'm gonna read this introduction of our next guest. This guest needs no introduction, but I'm going to introduce him anyways because he's an inspiration to some folks. I might say he's an inspiration to me, and maybe he's the kindest person I've ever met. The publisher of GoCougs.com and Dana Holgerson's best friend, Ryan Monceaux of GoCougs.com. Welcome, Ryan.
That was really heartfelt. Thank you.
It came from the heart. Of course, I didn't read it from a screen. Who would think such a thing?
I disagree with all of you on women's basketball and baseball and softball on the field having anything to do with this. You're not firing a guy and paying him up to about $1.3 million for baseball. You're just not. Now, if it has something to do with the softball off the field, okay, but I don't think it does. I think it's a money thing. Too much out, too little in. NIL, they haven't figured out. And so I just don't think those sports really matter at the end of the day when you're doing an evaluation.
Interesting.
You think it accumulates, like, maybe it's not the deciding factor, but I think it's gotta at least be a tipping point. Maybe the last straw that breaks the camel's back.
Okay, but I don't know that that's really what you're making decisions based on. Sorry to come on and crap all over your ideas.
I think it's part of it, but it's not a big part. The money is the biggest part, no question. The money, the fundraising, the lack of fundraising, the Ryan, did you hear that donors and other folks had kind of cut off the spigot with Pezman, so to speak? That make kind of sense?
Your fan base is really old. Perhaps one of the oldest fan bases in the country. Rice is probably older, but this is an old fan base. And these people are having to make decisions on what they do with their money. They have to be smarter about it. And you've gone to them, and I think y'all talked about this. You've gone to them so many times for so many different reasons. You got to help us pay for this guy. You got to help us with this project. We got to pay this guy off now. If you keep going to those same people over and over, you've never expanded your reach, and that's what the next guy has to do.
Agreed.
I don't even think you necessarily look for an athletic director, because once you hire coaches and give them a budget, they pretty much do the job. You don't have to babysit them. You need somebody who thinks money, 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 money all the time. And all the different, I mean, think about from a year ago, what you were fundraising to what you're fundraising to now. Now schools can be a part of NIL. Now you have schools like Ole Miss and Ohio State saying, we have a budget and we're going to 22% of revenue of TV and ticket sales. And I mean, it's a whole different deal. And you're just going to have somebody. And this is where you find out if the people across Cullen get it, if they really understand what has to happen. If you get an AD that is not fully prepared to go all in on NIL and on getting players the opportunities that they need, it's just not going to work.
And
could be 3 more. I mean, you're kind of 2 years behind right now.
Yes.
You could be another 3 or 4 or 5. I mean, you could be to the point where you just can't even compete.
This hire has to think outside the box. I mean, no question. And with the ideas, the fundraising ideas, talking to people, talking to different corporations, having those contacts outside of the same handful of folks. And Ryan said it, JD said it. We have all said it at some points on these shows and our own platforms. We are just going to the same people over and over and over, and they're tired of it. What else can they do? It's well past time to reach out to other people, other sources of revenue, and get them involved in Houston Cougars athletics.
But like Ryan said, he pointed out it's an old fan base that you're going to. You need a new way to reach that young fan base, that young alums that want to connect with Houston, that you can be able to sell why you should be a part of Houston and invest in Houston, and what the programs can be overall in totality if they have what they need to be able to pay players and get players and through NIL and other ways.
And this is one of the hardest things, is convincing people under 40 and over 70 to pay players.
Yes.
Because that's what you're doing. Why would a 28-year-old say, I'm going to take my hard-earned money and give it to y'all to pay a player? And then why would a 70-year-old who's been told for 50 years, this is wrong, this is against the rules, how are you going to get those people to buy in? It's a lot easier to do it in a big state school, and it's a lot harder to do here. And the person is going to have a huge roadblock just getting people into the mindset of, if you want to compete, we have to do this. Kelvin Sampson's not going to be here 20 more years. And when that is handed off, to keep it at that level, you're going to have the money. And you're talking for basketball, a couple $1 million more a year just for basketball. And you're nowhere with football, really, on NIL.
Yeah, the collective, I saw it on On3, and I mentioned it in my show, this the lunch break. The football collectives, on average, is between $15 and $20 million, big-time programs. Basketball is like $5 million for a collective. Houston is nowhere close.
On either.
And that is the problem. Ryan is right. The problem is communicating the importance of NIL to these alums who have Ryan dead on. Why should I contribute to NIL? I don't see the importance of that. And Coach Sampson said it in his little clip with the Mustang, and he said it in the Thursday Zoom call last week. Whether you are in favor of NIL or not, the reality is it's here. And we need to accept that and meet it head on. And that is a challenge facing Houston athletics.
I have a question for Joseph. And Joseph, after this question, feel free to hop off. We thank you once again for your time and
feel
being
free
a
to
part
hop
of the
off.
show. No, I just say that
I
because
like that
he's been here for 30. He's been working. He like us got caught off guard and he had to go work and been on the phones low key. So I want to let him go and not have to be on here for too much time. But Joseph, what I was going to ask, just on the topic of NIL, do you think that Houston can be competitive with those schools? Well, let's just start with the Big 12. Can they be competitive with those other schools in state, like Baylor, like TCU, like Texas Tech, when it comes to NIL? Is it even possible?
Well, I mean, there's tiers of NILs and how they're working and who's making the money. And they're the usual people that you'd expect, the Michigans, Oregons, Bama, guys like that. But I don't, the new Big 12, I don't see why you can't now. You look at, I'm not real familiar with maybe how a collective, say, at BYU operates, but yeah, here in the state, you better, because if you don't, I mean, these are the same schools that you have traditionally tried to compete with to get players to begin with. Now, let's say, for instance, with football, that's their thing. They want to put this fence around the Houston area or part of Texas and Louisiana. Well, who are you going to go against most of the time? So, yeah, I mean, to answer your question, if you don't think like you can, then you're already out of the game. And Ryan said it. NIL is not going away, and you either stand the risk of getting left way behind, or you need to catch up. And Houston's not even in a position to hop on board. They're catching up. They're running at the train right now because that's how far this thing has taken off without them. But you got to compete against Baylor, Texas Tech, TCU, those schools, because you're not going to compete against the Michigans and even the Marylands, the ones that have those big tie-ins with that exclusive donor or something like that. Houston just doesn't have that right now.
And the biggest problem for U of H is the big city works against you. What is working in NIL are small businesses that depend on a football or basketball event. If you go to Ames, Iowa, or Waco, or Lubbock, you're looking at like car dealers and restaurants and bars that need that revenue. Well, that doesn't exist here. There's no bar that needs a U of H football revenue. And so you're kind of coming at this at a whole different level. And yes, you have all these Fortune 500, but are those companies really going to put money into NIL on a large scale? You see the little one-off individual deals, but I just don't see those companies going all in on this.
Outside of a naming rights deal, I don't think I can name one company, not an individual, but a company that's done. You look at Mattress Mac, and that's been here and there. Tillman's the usual suspect, but there hasn't been a company outside of naming rights that's done anything in NIL with Houston. Jamal had the what was it, the Chevron or Exxon Mobil?
Exxon, yeah.
But there's not a lot, and that's, to me, that's a little surprising. But Ryan hits the point. They don't need Houston as much as if you're in Waco or even Fort Worth to an extent. Places like that where you can really get more bang for your buck than a big company in a big city.
I agree with that, and I think Tony has kind of comment to where I'm going. But Joseph said it earlier in the show. I don't believe it's imperative to get the major corporations. Get the mid-level and smaller corporations and get a lot of them. We have hundreds of thousands of alums in this city, in greater Houston area. And they are business owners. Get them to start contributing, make them feel connected to their alma mater, because UH marketing has not done, the Alumni Association for years has not done a great job communicating and keeping in contact with alums and helping them feel still involved and a part of the university. So it comes from that perspective as well. I go back to Coach Sampson and what he said. what we have been doing isn't working. So it's time to think differently, because if we don't, this window of being in the Big 12 and being part of the Power Four will end real quickly. And I don't believe the alums want that to happen. Hopefully they don't want that to happen.
You had an AD who almost had a phobia of doing interviews, of communicating.
Yeah.
No argument there.
Being out there. He would do 1 or 2 interviews a year with Joseph, but they didn't happen a lot. An AD should be talking to the beat writer often and on the record. And he should be doing podcasts and things like this pretty often. And it should be free-flowing conversation, not specific questions that you're allowed to ask and not allowed to ask. You just got to be straightforward. And an AD has to see that is where you communicate with people. They don't care about the emails you send them. They get those every Thursday. They know that. And nobody pays attention. But you get them where they're at on YouTube, on social media, wherever. And that's how you connect with people. And you do it over and over and over again. One-offs just don't work. And that's freshman level marketing. So you've got to have somebody that sees that and sees what Brett Yormark does. That guy is at everything. Some of the things he does don't work. They don't make sense.
Yep, right.
But most of the things he does puts this conference forward. Are there bad ideas? Yeah. But he's trying. He's looking for different ways, crevices where it can work. And that's what an AD and an NIL has to do.
Well
Sean
put.
Piper, I think, hit it right on the head too. He said UH has never been good at building a sense of community amongst the majority of their students and graduates. He says that's what it all boils down to. John Clark said the Alumni Association has never played a significant role in fundraising whatsoever, and he says that needs to change.
Well, that first point, I was there in 1994. Yeah. I mean, there were problems 30 years ago that still exist. And that is still a problem. That is a problem then. It's a problem now. That it has to change. And I'm speaking as an alum right now when I say this, we have to start doing things differently. Because y'all know it. What is the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. And that's what Houston Athletics has done for years.
Chris, I'm curious, what does the panel think? What is Chris Pezman's legacy at U of H? You know, he was an alum. He was a former team captain. Comes in, you know, sort of a dream job situation for him. But what do you think people remember most of his, 6 or 7 years?
Underachieving. But what sticks out to me, and I really want D-Skills to bring it up, but what sticks out to me is how underwhelming the welcome to the Big 12 presentation, celebration, that was just...
You didn't like the virtual toast?
Oh, that was just so underwhelming. And I was watching BYU's, what they did for their celebration, it just blew hours away.
And it was at 12:02. They didn't even hit it at midnight.
Right.
Yeah, they didn't hit it at midnight. They missed the deadline.
You know, that's a perfect example because you look, I know you guys don't like to, or Ryan doesn't like to hear about the school down 71, but they're doing the big SEC bash. Houston should have done some version of that. I don't care it's on 4th of July weekend. I don't care that you have this logistic. Find you a sponsor. Get you some money there. Have a little street festival, whatever. There was absolutely – you could even buy a legitimately nice T-shirt that had Big 12 on it the day that that it became in effect. And to me, that was just embarrassing. And then, the whole – I know that there was the licensing stuff with the blue jerseys and stuff, but that was another marketing gaffe where you could have cashed in on some money that you just weren't ready for. So, there's just some things that, to me, this school has gotten in its way more times than gotten out of its way.
Yep, and we call that couging it. We couged it too long, and that's a problem, and that has to change.
And another thing that hasn't changed, and all this plays into it, the media part. Me being an alum and going through the media athletics department and continuing to see how they operate, it's been the same. And I social media, I see other programs and how they market, how they operate. They're missing the marks and so much on social media and how they lack to have a better presence and be able to market on social medias, the videos they put out, all the different aspects of things that they're not allowing fans to see what they want to see. They're missing out on really viewing the media as another way of revenue. Because if you market your media, their YouTube channel, all those different things can be ways to really, really cash in and generate revenue if you really, really use it the right way and put a lot of content out.
I think they're doing a better job of that stuff. I think they're making
Within the past year, they've improved tremendously.
for sure, and there's more strategy behind it. Football is doing stories and different things, and basketball has really done a great job with creative over, I would say, the last couple of years. It probably not on that higher level, but that's just because there's not the same amount of money. I mean, you had an SID here, Tyler Pigg, who left to go do just stuff like that on social media for A&M.
Yep.
And when you leave the top job to go to a kind of a second tier job, well, there's a reason for that, because they just spend more money. There's more creative opportunities. And it's always going to be that way. There are ways you can do it, in basketball showing that blueprint. And I think football is starting to get it. And I think Willie is giving a lot more access than the last guy, my BFF. Miss you, Dana. But you're seeing it, and I think you're going to keep seeing it. There's more excitement around football. If you could have had last year's schedule with this year's off-season excitement, I think you would have packed that stadium a lot more than you did. This schedule, you're not going to pack it.
Yeah.
And you're starting over, and who knows the fan excitement going into this. I'm not sure. You're not hearing, like y'all said, about Rise, about season tickets. They're kind of just hoping you forget.
Well, that's another point. At this point, last year they kept having the regular emails about how many season tickets they've accumulated and this and that. Obviously, you mentioned that schedule and that hype there was just about being in the Big 12. And to be honest, like just the first games ever in the Big 12 conference, and obviously that big one that they had in October against Texas was a lot of the reason for that buzz. And this year there just hasn't been those updates on season tickets. But I think when you think of Chris Pezman's legacy, it'll kind of be like that. A lot of untapped potential. I feel like under his tenure, they never necessarily reached what could have been their ceiling. And just look at it in football. When they went 11-1 in 2021, they had momentum. It looked like they had some buzz, and they followed it up with a disappointing 7-5 season. And then we all know what happened the year after. It's been a lot of reactionary rather than being proactive. And I think ultimately that'll be what Chris Pezman's tenure as athletic director at U of H will be.
And I think what's happening so far this offseason, going into year 2 in the Big 12, is what some of us said we were concerned about going in year 1. Okay, once the shine wears off of being that first year in the Big 12, what's going to happen? What fans are going to do? What is marketing going to do? Because they kind of did they did a half-ass job going into the year 1 in the Big 12.
Houston fans, they're going to get back to their norm. Houston fans will support if you win. If you don't win, they're not showing up. But I firmly believe if the programs win, Houston fans will show up. They want to support winners. They want to be a part of it. So if you're winning and you got good teams coming in who wish they want to see, because we know that's part of Houston's fan experience, wanting to kind of see the other schools, they'll show up. You just got to win.
And winning cures a lot, but I think we all kind of are leery of how much success in wins Coach Fritz will have in year 1. JD, Ryan, Deion, Andy, 4 or 5 wins maybe, and that could be a problem for those fickle fans. Joseph says 2. I mean, it's not going to be a lot.
4. He says
Yeah.
4. He says 4.
So those fickle fans, well, y'all told me to start buying tickets, and we only won 4 games. Well, why should I buy tickets next year? You know, that kind of mentality Houston has to overcome.
Chris, you
Well,
had
it's
a
like with
question
Kelvin.
down there about season tickets, and Ryan
Yeah.
knows this. I mean, getting even the slightest morsel of information, it's like trying to get state secrets.
Yeah.
It's
Trying
like
to break
going
into
to
Fort Knox.
I mean, literally. And to me, that shows you that you don't have anything good to sell in terms of what the results are. You know, for instance, they used to have a ticket person who's at UCF now, and I think UCF is sold out X number of years, and they're routinely posting what their season ticket numbers are, what they've reached. I have no clue until the season starts when I can do open records requests on how many people actually go through the turnstiles, how many season ticket pay, all that stuff is sold. Otherwise, we'd have no idea because I've never been able to either trust the information given to me, or I've never even had anybody that's been willing to give me exact numbers. And that, to me, that says a lot about how you operate an athletic department and maybe and I'm not saying you're hiding stuff. You're just not, it's almost like you're not proud of it.
You're hiding.
That's a big one.
Agreed.
So at U of H, you have to FOIA to get most information. When they want you to have that information, that request gets turned around same day or next day. When they don't want you to have it, they get by law 10 business days. And typically you get it on that 10th business day, about 4:30 in the afternoon. Yeah. Right before somebody goes home. So this is the kind of thing that should be out there. And they should be saying, look, we're behind last year. Let's pick it up. Let's get this done. Look, we need your help. Get your friends. Look at what Willie's doing. You had this issue at Hoffines, and you made it better by being a top 5 nationally program. That's not going to happen with football, certainly not in the short term. And it's going to take fans buying in before the success happens. I don't know if that's possible, but Deion, what is that behind you? Your sign?
It says Space City Noobs.
That's just, yeah.
I thought it said Space City Nudes, and I was really concerned about what you were trying to sell over there. Okay, that's better.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And this is an issue. Buy tickets for hot, humid games, poor stadium food, no good entertainment or energy is a tough sell to fans. The concessions, for as much as the Landry ties and all those, factors, is not good. It's subpar. Agree? Disagree?
Well, Ryan, I did a
Some
video
of us
about
haven't
it.
gone and tried the food like Andy has, so I don't know how much things cost.
That's what I was saying. They got some gems in some of them, but definitely not enough. And it's not necessarily. I would say some of it is an inconvenience factor, especially like when it comes to everyone that sits in the upper deck. Like they have to travel down and then go find a specific section, which makes it a big inconvenience for a lot of people. And there are hidden gems. Like there's a lot of other places that are just, the minimum stadium food when it comes to popcorn, nachos, and they're not necessarily the best ones at that. And overpriced when it comes to some of them. Not to put the name on your blast, but some of the tacos, not the best.
You know what? I hope Tillman and his people are watching, because we've seen and heard about this often.
Yes.
The food at Fertitta is horrible, and that horrible is in all caps. Hoop and Holler,
And it's the bare
Houston.
minimum.
Agree. Stadium concessions need help.
Should start by putting a Star Pizza in one of the concessions.
I'm all for that. I got no problem with that.
I mean, it goes to the what they've been saying for so long, that they need to enhance the game day experience. Now,
Yes.
Many of us are in the press box already, so I don't go down Tailgate Alley, and I don't know what's going on out there. It looks like it's a lot of fun. When you get into that stadium, though, I don't see that energy that kind of brings it in with them. people, they're late to their seats maybe, or there's nobody in the stands because of the product. But that's where you got to start. You see Fertitta Center, how that place can get loud and jumping. Will it ever be like that in football? They were 10-0 in 2015, and there weren't full stadium seats and stuff. So I just don't know how you change that, or if you can ever change that, Big 12 or not.
And that might be an unfortunate reality, but I hope it has to change, hopefully at some point. But I want to go ahead.
One thing that Joseph mentioned was the tailgating, and me being a part of a fraternity and being part of a leadership group who's been in communication with the athletic department. They have dropped the ball in being able to work with different groups, not outside of just ours, and being able to make the tailgating experience convenient and better enough to be able to have people to do what they want to do with tailgate, but then go to the game as well. It's always been a conflict of, we can tailgate for X amount of time, or then it's always been a conflict with the people not being able to fully enjoy the tailgate, and then have enough time to go to the game. Because for a lot of people I talk to, they want to do both. They don't want to just tailgate.
Right.
But I think they've dropped the ball in many instances. It's not really just kind of communicating it, and I don't really know if it's a lot of different things that go into that.
That added to the list of problems. Andy can vouch for this one right here. As I'm sure Ryan can too, and JD as well. The Wi-Fi at TDECU is still bad.
It's way better. 5 years ago, you could not get online. You couldn't check a score. It's better. At Fertitta Center, it's perfect, right?
Great.
I think everybody agrees. But yeah, I think it's better. And Pezman, that was his thing. Is after the first home game would be his. Oh wait, we're gonna do better. Wait till the second home game. We're gonna get better. We're gonna get better. And it was with food. It was with
the ticketing
people outside, the ticketing, getting into the stadium, and then the Wi-Fi. So besides the product on the field, the Wi-Fi, the ticketing, and getting in the stadium, and the food, everything was going pretty well.
I'm looking at some of these comments. It's just, we sound defeatist, but we cannot be defeated. We just have to do things differently, think differently, be more active, be proactive. And what did Coach Sampson say? Get your butts in the seats, get off your ass, and do stuff, and be proactive. And that's what it's going to take from the alums, administration, fans. We have to look at ourselves and do our part to help Houston Athletics compete in the Big 12, because that's what they said, right? We are in the Big 12. We're in the Big 12 to compete for championships. Well, got to start doing something better than what you've been doing in the past.
I also thought it was telling that Kelvin said, we're in the Big 12, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're a Big 12 school. And I think there's a huge distinction between just being in there, but also being able to not only act like it, but really prove that you are. And I think that's where the gap is right now.
But I think to their credit, they said that and they made two good moves. So I'm sure we all would agree with Willie Fritz getting rid of Dana Hogeston, bringing us change there, and now making a change that they just recently made. Now we wait to see who would be the replacement. But those two moves coincide with saying you want to compete for championships.
And Carl Lewis and Will Blackburn was a very good move. And I don't think people are giving them credit for making that decision after Leroy Burrell went to Auburn. So I think they did a pretty good job there, and especially the way they broke that up. I think that works really well. So yeah.
I think we've done enough. This has been a great crowd, great interaction with the fans, and thank everybody on this short notice for talking about this big news. Personally, I'd like to see some other changes in the administration over there.
What you got, Chris? What else you want to see?
But I'm not going to say that right here now. Different time.
I think there are a lot of people that should be concerned.
Yes, agreed.
And we're not just talking coaches.
Well, no, I'm not talking about
Correct.
coaches at all.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about the administrative bloat. It's okay to have bloat when the revenue numbers go up, but when the revenue numbers stay flat, all that bloat, there's a problem. And, you know, you've got 100 different people doing one thing. Well, okay, why isn't there some noticeable change there? And I think that's what a new AD is going to come in and have no loyalty to people necessarily that work there, only to people that work there.
Chris, I'll come back on the show coming up if you can do a segment where we break down the new video game for EA Sports. I got the machine, I got the game. We'll have a little test on. We can even do the U of H players, see what their ratings are. That might be a lot.
Play along,
Yeah.
What's the system that you have?
I'll leave that
Yeah,
to
what system you have?
Andy and Dayon, because I
got
haven't
a
played in a long time.
PS5, so we can.
We got it. I'll
Yeah.
my gamer.
Let them do that then.
Ryan doesn't know anything about this fun stuff. So.
I know everything about it.
I know nothing.
I'm waiting for the scoreboard to be finished, and I'm going to play it on there at TDECU.
How many people would pay money to do that? That's an NIL. That's a fun rate. That's an opportunity there.
Yep.
Hell, turn TDECU into Topgolf. You know, let people tee off from the end zone or something. You know, do something. There's endless possibilities.
Yeah.
But I would play on that video board.
Oh, you would?
Yeah.
Okay. There needs to be smaller, lower price points for people to get involved in NIL. You've got to get them started at a low level and build it. You can't ask for $1,000, $10,000 run it backs just out of the gate. And so you've got to get people involved, convinced that they need to do it, and then start them at a small level and then convince them to do 10% more every year.
I think that goes to Chris's older point earlier when he talked about reaching a lot of those not so high level corporations, but mid-level or low level to get them involved in alums and being a part and donating and stuff like that.
This has been great. I enjoyed it. We got 2 heavy hitters come on the show. Appreciate that. This is awesome. Andy, you're in control, man.
Well, first and foremost, I'd like to thank our 2 guests in Joseph Duarte and Ryan Monceaux, who joined us on short notice. Yeah, Ryan,
Star Pizza.
That's what
it's buffet day tomorrow. Friday, 11 to 3, 11 to 2.
Well, Chris, go ahead. Okay,
We're
about
going.
the buffet, and I can talk about the pizza choices. What do you got to say about the pizza buffet at Star Pizza, which is now added a day, like Ryan said, now Tuesday and Friday, which is tomorrow, June 21st.
Yeah. If you see me at Star Pizza tomorrow, do not say hi.
Tomorrow.
I don't want to.
I might stop by tomorrow. Pizza. I don't know, but yeah.
Get the Maryland. The Maryland's where it's at. Canadian bacon.
Appetizer. If you're going to get an appetizer, you got to get the meatball duels. But anyway, this has been Pod Slam Jamma, sponsored by Star Pizza with 3 locations throughout the Houston area. Star Pizza is your go-to stop for some delicious pizza. And like I said, their famous lunch pizza buffet has now expanded, and it is now on both Tuesdays and Fridays, which, again, tomorrow is Friday, so be sure to stop at any one of their 3 locations. Once again, thank you, Ryan and Joseph, for joining on this episode of Pod Slam Jamma. Obviously, the big news of the day, which is that Chris Pezman is out as the athletics director at the University of Houston, and we shall see who that next person is, who the hire is. And we got about a couple more weeks of the doldrums of summer, and then Big 12 Media Day comes around for football, and before you know it, comes August, we're in training camp. So, Joseph, I'll go to you first. Where can people find you on the internet? Anything you'd like to plug, or anything? The floor is yours. Where can people?
I got nothing. But no, you can find me on X. That sounds dirty, but X, formerly Twitter. Joseph_Duarte. I don't do Instagram. I don't do TikTok. You can hit me up on Facebook. I may friend you, may not if you're Ryan. But yeah, I
Don't want
appreciate you guys having me on, and I look forward to. I think we're gonna have a lot to cover beginning in August with training camp.
Yep. Joseph, you tried your best Kelvin impersonation for a second. I thought you were going to keep this short. I was about to start the monologue. Ryan of GoCougs.com. Anything you'd like to plug, sir?
I'd like you to read that intro again. I thought that was compelling.
Introduction. What are you talking about, Reed?
I don't know. GoCougs.com. GoCougs1 on all the social media stuff. We have a show we're going to do in a couple weeks with Galen and Brad and myself and maybe a couple others. And then we're going to do some TBT stuff in July, which is going to be fun or not. I don't know.
I love the TBT, Ryan.
Do you?
I do. I follow.
I don't know enough about it. They
Yeah, I
just
love
did
it,
the soccer tournament. Is that what it was?
Yes. Yep.
And I don't know anything about that, but I'm interested to see it. It sounds compelling. I was hanging out with Galen, I think 2 nights ago.
I got some info about tickets numbers when it's my turn.
Yeah. I thought I was going to get about 10 minutes with Galen. I got 3.5 hours. And that's a lot. I love that guy, but that's a lot. What are your ticket numbers, Chris?
They are, let me see, hoping to get like numbers around a couple thousand so far tickets sold for TBT and Forever Cruise.
Really?
Yes. And they're going to announce the schedule and everything on Wednesday, the 26th, so next Wednesday.
Yeah, the teams you're playing. You know the
Yes.
days.
Yes. So that's another hope. Once they know who you're going to play, get another bump in ticket numbers from that.
I tried to get ahead and I asked Galen, okay, so when are you starting practice? When can we get in and talk? It's like, I don't know. I don't even know if we're going to practice. So we'll see.
Who's coaching them?
I was just about
Me.
to say that.
Me.
You're coaching them?
Yeah.
That's
So
is that good or bad?
What's your philosophy?
I'm Guy V. Lewis. I'm just going to roll the ball out and let them play.
You're going to have your own blanket, towel?
The towel, yeah. Polka dot towel. Yeah, the problem is I love defense, but if they don't play defense, I don't care. It's a summer tournament. So we'll see what Galen does.
You got $1 million on the line, Ryan.
Yeah, that's fascinating to me. Like it's winner take all is how I understand it. And
Yes.
so
Yep.
you could be just if you make it through and play into the Final Four and then the championship to be that close, I mean that's a lot of money for these guys.
Yep.
So I'm interested. I want to see what happens.
What makes it even better is the Elam ending. Every game has a great ending because they all end on a made shot. So when you see that, every game that you watch, it's a good game, whether it's a blowout or not. Once they get to the Elam ending, they all end on a made shot. That's a really good.
Have y'all seen this Elam ending thing before? Because I haven't. I don't know much about it.
It really kind of reminisces how it is playing in the park. That's the kind of the feel that you get.
Okay.
And then because once you get to a certain score, they add like 6 points to the leading score. And well, you have to. So say for example they have 70, it's 70 to 74. Once they get to that point mark under the time, they add the target mark is 6 more points, so 76. So then you have to score 6 more points to win the game. And so every game ends on a made shot. It's cool. Once you see it, you're like, oh yeah. And then if you really follow college basketball like I do, I recognize a lot of the players for a lot of the alumni teams because most of them don't make it pro, but they're still with big stars and play really good and still good. And so it's really competitive, man. So a lot of really good games.
Okay.
Well, we'll see. We'll see how you lead the Forever Cougs, right?
Yeah, we're excited.
Chris, where can people find you, sir?
Houston Round Bar View on all the social media platforms, Instagram, TikTok, Threads, Spoutable. The only one that is not Houston Roundball Review is the original that I was on. That's X/Twitter, where it's the HR Review. But more and more, I'm more active on the other ones, the newer platforms like IG, Threads, TikTok, Spoutable, and of course, the Houston Roundball Review YouTube channel.
And my name's Andy Yanez. You can follow me on Twitter at @Yanez_5. The one thing I want to plug is that we will be doing this again in less than 3 weeks now. I mean, 3 weeks from now, it'll be over, but we will be live from Las Vegas at the Big 12 Football Media Days for some special Trade Coups on site. So maybe by then, the University of Houston will have its new athletics director. We'll see what Brett Yormark has to say when he speaks to media on Tuesday. So be sure to follow us. It'll be July 9th and 10th when we will do the shows from Las Vegas. All three of us, Chris, myself, and Dayon, will be live from Las Vegas to do those shows at Big 12 Media Day. And Dayon, you get the final word, sir, as soon as I give you a second to take off the plug. And there you go, sir.
Well, like I said, it's on the screen. You follow me on all social media platforms at Dayon Dunlap. This was really fun. Really enjoyed with Ryan and Joseph Duarte, talking with all you guys. Of course, Chris and Andy. I can't wait. I'm excited for Vegas. It's going to be my first time going to Vegas, so I'm excited to be there. Excited to see football media days, and hopefully UH has a new AD and open up the program a little bit more, giving us the opportunity to interview some players, talk to maybe the AD, some coaches.
And as
always, go Cougs.
Thank y'all.